Welcome to Module 6, Relationship Marketing. In this module, you're going to learn the importance of treating FSBOs the way they wish to be treated. If you remember, your goal is a relationship. The foundation for that goal is respect. Respect for the seller and respect for yourself. You've seen this graphic, but it's important, so let's go over it yet again. If you are transaction focused, then you are self-interested. You are competitive. Your priority is the sale, and your thinking is very short-term. By contrast, if you are relationship-focused, you are oriented toward the customer, in this case, the FSBO seller. You are collaborative. You're working with them as a partner. You're interested in the relationship, and your thinking is long-term. So, how do you do this? What services can you offer? This is just a partial list, but it highlights the kinds of things that you can offer to FSBO sellers on an unbundled, by the hour, or flat fee basis. Such items as supervising an inspection, showing the house by appointment, presenting and preparing counteroffers, dealing with inspectors, dealing with attorneys, etc. Your goal is to earn the FSBO seller's respect. Yes, this looks like a complex graphic, but what it's highlighting is how the FSBO seller conceives of themselves and the transaction. On the left, you see that there are a set of influences, external influences and internal influences. They come together to form some kind of a self-concept that the FSBO seller has. And it is that self-concept that enters into their decision-making process. If you attempt to pitch them that you want their listing and that they need you, you are interfering with their self-concept. By contrast, if you are discussing how you can be their partner, how you can help them in this, how you can make the decision-making process better, you are adding to their self-concept. And when you do that, you earn their respect. As Steve Jobs told us, you can't look at the competition and say you're going to do it better. Instead, you have to look at the competition and say you're going to do it differently. One of my favorite quotes comes from Jennifer Allen Hagendorn. And in her book, Sell with Soul, she defines a minimum that each of us needs to do in any real estate agent relationship. She calls it being a reasonably competent human being. A reasonably competent human being is almost always on time, returns phone calls promptly, strives for 100% error-free written material, watches their language, is emotionally mature, and keeps their promises. The last one is very important, promising what you can do and keeping it. Now, when you get to the FSBO seller, one of the things you must do if you're going to try to earn the relationship, earn their respect, and be reasonably competent is to ask good questions. Do your homework first. Don't ask them questions that you reasonably can assume you've already got answers to. Instead, great questions are, how did you pick this neighborhood? What do you see as the neighborhood's pros and cons? When you move, what are you going to miss most? Where are you going? Is it going to be to a similar house or to a change? What is the best thing about your present house? And are you hoping to replicate it when you move? These questions are important because they, one, establish rapport and empathy with the seller, and two, they prime you when you go to become the FSBO seller's buyer's agent. Now, the other thing you can do is provide some helpful advice. Helpful advice, for example, about being realistic, or making cosmetic improvements, etc. Let's go through some examples. You want to tell the FSBO seller to be realistic. Their home is one of their most personal possessions. They can't be blind to its flaws because if they are, they're not addressing what a prospective buyer is going to see and demand. They can't limit their home viewing. Schedules are not going to always be the same. A prospective buyer wants to see the house on their schedule. The FSBO seller wants to show the house on their schedule. You will never know if you don't get these schedules coordinated which one of you is going to be the next home buyer. You've got to teach the FSBO seller to restrain from making emotional decisions. They can't allow a few $100s to ruin a sale. They have to learn to take a look at the big picture and to always react rationally. Your goal is to help them use sound business judgment. You have the expertise to decide which cosmetic improvements make sense and which don't. The FSBO seller may be blinded by their emotional attachments. You need to remind a prospective FSBO seller that their prospects will make up their minds within the first few minutes of being in a house, and first impressions are what matters. Spending a few hundred or a few $1,000s could make thousands of dollars of difference in the value they get out of their home. It is critical that FSBO sellers understand that they are to always disclose property flaws and to disclose them up front. If there's any advice that you give every FSBO you deal with, client or not, it should be this one. They can make a mega mistake by failing to do proper disclosures. And as a professional real estate agent, you know the importance of disclosure. Please pass it on to every FSBO seller you deal with. Now, one more tip. Before you go to see or speak with the FSBO seller, you got to look at Zillow. Did the FSBO seller reclaim their listing? Is it theirs, or is it still listed with the flat fee MLS provider that they used? Merely pointing out to the FSBO seller the importance of reclaiming their listing has already started you down the road of earning their respect because you've done them an important favor. What else can you do? Probably one of the easiest things you can offer is to offer to babysit an open house for them for, say, $100. The truth is that most buyers will need some space from the seller. You can point that out to the FSBO seller and offer to be the one who provides that space. Two things happen. One, you're providing value that you're giving them almost instantly. And two, you're creating an opportunity to have yet another discussion with the FSBO seller after the open house is over. It's critical that when you talk to the FSBO seller that you make contact their preferred way. If you're a telephone person and they're an email person, you still must do it their way. Don't assume that your preference is their preference. And above all, never offer to use snail mail as your contact method. Whatever method they want, try to stay in touch at least once a week. And whenever something happens in the market, be sure to send them a market update. Be it email, be it the phone, be it SMS, talk to them their way. It's critically important. But the most important, the secret sauce to all of this is the service you can offer during the buyer's home inspection. You, as a neutral third party, can attend the buyer's home inspection and be there while the agent, the buyer, and the inspector are doing their walkthrough. You need to remind the FSBO seller that the home inspector is being paid hundreds of dollars to find errors and flaws in the home. If the buyer is there, the buyer can get nervous. As a FSBO seller, the seller cannot be the one who calms the buyer down. But you, as a neutral third party, you can calm the buyer down, reassure them that everything will be all right, and keep the transaction moving. This is one service that the FSBO seller cannot provide for themselves. Above all, if there's a simple rule you want to use, it's treat the FSBO seller like they're your favorite cousin. You might have a cousin that tried to sell the home themselves. Did you charge them full price, or were you available to give them advice? I suspect the latter. Treat every FSBO seller that way. You'll earn their respect, but more importantly, you'll earn their relationship, and that's your goal.